Whether you just woke up, you're just going to bed, or you are eating lunch at work, this is Funny Like a Clown Podcast, episode 52, whatever part of the world you are tuned in from. It is March 1st, 2020. As always, Funny Like a Clown Podcast is brought to you by G Vegas Buffalo Sauce for the spicy, sweet, savory taste of game time. There's only one G Vegas, delivered right to your doorstep. You don't have to go grocery shopping. Home fresh, available at www.gvegas.webs.com. Get this stuff. Go green. It'll make your mouth pop. You ever have your mouth pop? Some things are good, some things are great, and some things just make your mouth pop. And G Vegas Buffalo Sauce will absolutely do that. We are here to discuss comedians, and today we're talking about a big guy, and I'm a big guy, so I can relate. Louie Anderson. Legendary television comedian, actor, television host. Did it clean? Did it the right way? Depending if you like that kind of comedy or not. They say the rule in comedy is if you work clean, you always work. If you work dirty, you may do what you love to do, but you're not always working because every gig in there's only a select amount of people that like that kind of humor. Well, everybody likes clean humor. You can go to old age homes, you can go to kids things, you can pretty much perform for anybody. Nowadays, everybody's offended by something. I don't even try. If I offend you, that's on you, not me, because you can't walk around in a bubble because somebody's gonna pop your bubble. So don't be in a bubble. Be you. If people like you, you'll find the right people. If they don't, then go like somebody else who really cares. Let's see, he created the cartoon series Life with Louie. I guess that was what he was best remembered for. He said he created that. He was picked on at school for being overweight, which I can relate to that, because so was I. And he used comedy to deal with it, which comedy is a great defense mechanism, no matter what you deal with in life. I was going through a bitter breakup with a girl, and we had a child together. And my child was being caught in the middle of it, and it was just tearing me apart because I could see it happening, and the courts don't want to listen to Dad, and it was killing me, and I just, you choose, you either snap and walk into McDonald's with a shotgun and start mowing people down, or you say, this is so far past ridiculous, I'm just going to laugh about it. And I found through humor how to deal with the whole unfairness of the court system, and if you can laugh about things in life, it's a better route than letting it eat away at you and drive you crazy. So hats off to Louie. There's worse things in life than being big, man, okay? And kids are ruthless, man. You get older, you learn in life it don't make you a bad person if you have flaws. We all have flaws, but kids are ruthless. They want to find things to pick on you for, and it makes them feel like a bigger person if they can put somebody else down, and that's what you do when you're young. And as you get older, you realize, it's a lot easier to put someone down than it is to bring them up. That's a real challenge in life. Can you bring someone up? Can you make them feel good about themselves rather than, try to kick somebody down? That ain't the way to go in life. Anybody can do that. It was a cartoon series, Life with Louie, and I guess, that's a safe thing doing a cartoon thing. I can think of, Jerry Seinfeld with the B movie, Mike Myers with Shrek. How many comedians, they went to a cartoon because it's a safe thing, and I remember... who was it? Warrant. I forget who the lead singer for Warrant. He said he regretted writing Cherry Pie because his entire career was going to be defined by that one song. And, people expect you to sing it. Night after night, you got to sing it, and you get sick of it. And, if you do a cartoon, it almost guarantees you're not going to be a one-hit wonder, You can have your one big thing in comedy, but then the second thing, that's it. You fizzle out. And, some people that were one-hit wonders, they say, do you hate the, comedy routine that made you a one-hit wonder? And some people say they despise doing it every night because they're so sick of doing it. They've done 100 million times. Other people say, hey, that one-hit wonder means I never got to work a day job the rest of my life. I love that one-hit wonder. It keeps me from having to actually work for a living. I can do comedy. So, however you look at it, doing a cartoon as your second project, it's a safe move. I remember Richard Marx. He was a musician out of the 80s, and he put out his first album, was a hit. Then he put out a second album, and it sounded pretty much close to the first album, and they said, why didn't you go risky? Why didn't you do something different? He's like, I didn't want to be artist number 1 million and whatever that was a one-hit wonder, and his second album flopped, by staying true to what he did, he almost guaranteed the second album would be a hit, but he didn't do nothing risky where it'd be remembered as something different than the first one. But, so, a cartoon, it's a safe move. Louie did it. That's what he's best remembered for. He's had 4 books, and I got to be honest with you, I watch a lot of movies. I'm not a big book reader, and I guess books are being a thing of the past. People got their tablets and reading them on now. But I'm not a big. I read, the newspaper. I guess it's what interests you. I did read Sam Kinnison's book, and I couldn't put that down because I'm a big Sam Kinison fan. But I guess not much else interests me. In high school, even teachers, they wanted you to read their favorite book because they wanted you to get out of it what they get out of it. Well, you may have different interests than your teachers, and that book don't interest you. So you got to find something that interests you. Don't read what somebody else recommends. But I guess his biggest books out of the four were Hey Mom, Stories from My Mother, and but you can read them too. Okay, so I guess books. You don't only spank people with books, you can read them too, right? I guess was the joke there. I don't know. Let's see. So grab one of his books. I got a few books actually I want to read, but I'm not a big reader. But every now and then I fly to Vegas or I fly to LA or something. So my next flight, what keeps me busy on the flight, I'm going to read a book. He was host of the third revival of the game show Family Feud, which I remember him well from that, and that's been revived a few times. I think 4 or 5 times now, and he did a very good version of it. I did like him as a host. He kept it friendly. He kept it, he was one of those personalities that you like, okay? Because everybody could relate to him because he worked clean. He had a legendary career as a clean comic and a comic everybody grew to love. And, I guess it's not even worth talking about it, but I'm going to talk about it because I can't stand when a person's entire career or entire lifetime is blemished by one incident. Jesus once said, let the first person who's never sinned throw the first stone at someone who has, and everybody drop the stones because we're all sinners. We all got a blemish on our record. We've all done something wrong in life where, if you're constantly doing things wrong, you're just a fuck up in life. All right, that's who you are. But I mean, if you got one blemish on your record, don't let it define your entire life of who you are, because you can be a good person who's done one bad thing, and that don't define who you are as a human being. But he was blackmailed for propositioning a guy, I think, at a casino or a hotel or something. And he did an interview, and he was man enough to talk about it. He said, I was drunk out of my mind and made a bad decision. And this guy wanted $100,000 in hush money, which Louie didn't want to pay, but he was on Family Feud. It was a big thing. He didn't want to ruin that from a controversial scandal. And he had to get the FBI eventually involved, and the FBI busted this guy and sent him to jail where he belonged. And Louie said, more than hurting him as, somebody doing this, he was questioning human beings and why don't you get a job and work for a living? Why do you got to try to blackmail somebody over, one discretion they made in life? I mean, not that it made, it don't make good what Louie did. Okay, sure, he was drunk and he did something inappropriate, and sure, he should be accountable for that, but, 2 wrongs don't make a right. Blackmailing this guy is certainly not the way to go about it. And, I had an instance in my life, and I recently had it thrown in my face where, I'm not even going to bring up the instance, but because I'm a local celebrity, if anybody else did something, it wouldn't even been friggin' talked about, but because they knew me, because I was in the paper for doing comedy, they wrote a big old article, and these newspapers, as long as they can use the word allegedly, okay, Dennis is a prick, he's a jerk, he's a cocksucker, he's an asshole, he's no fucking good, allegedly. So as long as they use allegedly, it don't have to be true, but they can't get sued, okay? And, I was charged with something. I went to court. The charges were dropped once they heard the story. But they don't run big fancy articles when they drop the friggin' charges against you. But it's a good story when they're charging you with something. So, just because you're charged with something don't mean you were convicted. So I recently had the article thrown in my face but if you read the article, it says I was charged. It don't say I was convicted. And it was allegedly all this stuff happened, but they never ran a big article when they dropped the charges against me. So, don't judge Louie by that one instance in life. And, the next time you're going to judge somebody in life, think about what you've done wrong, because we've all done something wrong in life, okay? Because that's what makes you human, okay? We're all sinners. So let's move on past that. Hopefully everybody learns a lesson in life that, don't judge people by one thing. Judge them by their entire body of work, not one thing. This one was talked about a little bit, and I have not seen it, but I guess he's on the FX series Baskets, which, boy, everything's going to the internet. Every series is on the internet. I think television is going to be a thing of the past. But for his role on Baskets, he was nominated 3 times for a Primetime Emmy Award. So He won it once in 2016, so if you're nominated 3 times, that means you're consistently doing something good. You're not a one-hit wonder. You're not doing it one time. You're consistently doing a good job. So hats off to him that he finally won one. I can relate with this guy by being big and getting picked on in school because the same thing happened to me, and I can relate with this one too. He openly talks about being in an abusive childhood. I guess his father was a very abusive man. My father was an abusive man also. And he talked about, I guess his father was a serious alcoholic, and, he'd come home and he'd look at his sister, and just a look would tell him whether his dad was drunk or not from his sister. Things are okay or things are not okay just by the look on her face. Like, oh, it's okay, or oh, it's not okay. I better walk on eggshells. And, I don't know. They say most comedians do. They have a troubled past. They use comedy to deal with it. 'Cause like I said, it either drives you nuts or you learn to laugh about it, and that's what you got to do. And certainly, man, my father was in the Army. I don't know if he was shell shock or what the hell happened to him, or post-traumatic stress disorder, or CDT, or whatever they call it. But man, he'd look for something to scream about all day. I don't know if it was a drill sergeant screaming at him, but he'd just follow you around the house just waiting for you to blink. Just blink so I got something to scream about you. But hats off to Louie, and I would suggest to anybody out there, if you got something troubling in your life, don't let it eat away at you, because, man, you can turn to alcohol, you can turn to drugs, you try to cover it up, it will destroy your life. Learn to laugh about it. Learn to let it go, and don't be consumed by hate. Don't let hate consume you, because if you do that, you're doomed for the rest of your life, okay? At some point, you got to say, you know what, it was wrong, but I got to let it go and move on. And, whether you choose to laugh about it, you choose to talk to someone about it, or, don't let it eat you away for the rest of your life. Because, Louis even said, by him letting it bother him in his life, he's still letting it in his adult life. He's still letting his father control him. Even in his adult life, by you letting it eat you away, you're still letting that person control you, and it's still letting them do the wrong even after his father's passed away, but by him still dealing with it, it's still eating away his life, and his father's still controlling him. So you got to cut out that control and say, you know what, it was wrong, but I'm better than that, and I'm going to move on. So go to a comedy show, laugh it up, learn how to laugh, because laughter is the best medicine. Going way back, he got his start in 1984. He debuted on The Tonight Show. And man, I'll tell you, The Tonight Show, they didn't have all the, the internet where people can make it as stars nowadays for comedians. Hey, you don't have to let the industry control you now. You can go to YouTube and put something out, and the whole world's got access to it. Well, back then, there weren't, a lot of comedy shows. I mean, you had to stay up late night. I mean, there was, the Midnight Special or The Tonight Show. And you got on The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson, you were at the top of your game. If he gave you the okay, or if he gave you the wave, come over to the couch, that was it. You were a made comic. Where now, it's a great thing to add to your credit if you're on one of these late night shows, but you're not a made comic. I remember, I forget who the comic was. He said, he got on one of the late night talk shows, and he said, this was it. My career's going to take off. I made the late night. It was good enough. I finally, he said the next day, you know what happened? Nothing. He never got a phone call. Where back then, if you were recognized from The Tonight Show, you were headlining every comedy club, because, everybody could recognize you from that show, and you were a made comic. So, hats off to Louie for getting on, especially in that time era, That's why they call it the Johnny Carson era, because it was a different era back then. If you get on in the Johnny Carson era, that was the era to be on. If you get on now, it's still cool, but not as cool as it was back then. And let's see, I remember local comedian out of Boston here, Lenny Clark. He recently got on the Jimmy Kimmel show, and every comedian in Boston was just tuned in. Whoa, we get to see Lenny on Jimmy Kimmel, man. Where, Lenny already made it, and it was a table, even Jimmy said legend right there. Guy's just a legend, Where back then, it was, you were just starting out your career, and you did good enough where that was going to launch you into legend status. So it's a different era. So who knows? Maybe someday Funny Clown Podcast will go somewhere, and you guys will turn me into the next big thing. Until then, I'm local star Dennis Wirth, and last few times I went to Walmart, I have got recognized. I'm a Walmart legend. I went in to buy a belt because I lost some weight, and guy comes running up to me, Dennis Wirth! Dude, you get funnier every time I see you, man. I love your comedy show. And it's like, that never gets old, man. It makes me feel good. I mean, yeah, it's only on a local level, but hey, it's better than nobody recognizing you, I guess. You got to start somewhere. Nobody starts at the top. I start at Walmart, apparently, so hey, good for me. That could be my blue-collar clientele, is the Walmart folks, okay? Let's see. Here's what I didn't know about him. In 1985, he was actually cast in Perfect Strangers, which I was a fan of that show way back then, opposite Bronson Pinchot. And they said, he was still a greenhorn. This was before Louie was a star, I mean, he did The Tonight Show, but this was the next, television series that was going to launch him into stardom. They said the chemistry wasn't right, and he was eventually taken out and cast by the other guy who played the role. They were going to call it Louie, and instead they called the character Larry. They changed it to Larry because it wasn't Louie anymore, and that was the character we knew from the show Larry. So I guess everybody's got on the resume, you can't do everything. You make your choices, and some are good choices and some are bad choices. I mean, I recently put out a short film, and I've always wanted to do it. And I remember, Star Wars, the creator, George Lucas, he said he made Star Wars for himself. If anybody else liked it, great, but he made it for himself. He didn't make it for anybody else. And I made that short film for me. I loved the heck out of it. I didn't really care if anybody else liked it or not, but it did cause me a few headaches by making it in the comedy world, which, hey, sometimes you make good choice, sometimes you make bad. I did it. I got to live with the consequences of it, I guess. But it was me being creative, and I did what I wanted to do. If you're offended by it, then I guess like I said, that's on you. Everybody's offended by something nowadays. In 1986, he was in Ferris Bueller's Day Off, and that was one of the all-time summer classic hits back then. You had to see Ferris Bueller's Day Off. It was just a cameo role, but he was in it, and like I said, you got to start somewhere. 1987, he had a Showtime comedy special, and back then, if you could get on one of the pay channels, that was a new mecca for comedy. Like I said, it was the midnight special of the Tonight Show. But boy, when the cable companies came along, then they could start saying whatever they wanted on there. Not that Louie was a dirty comic, but it's like Sirius XM satellite radio now. People are paying for it because people can actually talk on there the way they want. There's no FCC rules, on regular radio that. You couldn't put these comics on before. It was a new mecca. So, I mean, getting on there, it was a new mecca for comedians. Gave you great exposure. Everybody should remember from this one, 1988, Coming to America. I remember he was in the McWhatever. It was a spinoff of McDonald's. He was like a window boy or whatever. And they're coming out with a new Coming to America. And Louie actually said, wouldn't it be funny if you made him had the character back, or made him like the manager of the McDonald's now or something. Like he worked his way up into Coming to America too. So he said he hoped he got back. I don't know if he's going to be in the movie or not, but if it would be funny to see this many years later. He worked himself up to manager, so good for him. But 1989, he was on the Muppet section of the Jim Henson Hour, which Jim Henson, he was the creator of the Muppets, had his own talk show for a while where the Muppets were involved with it. And I remember the Muppet Show when I was a kid, man. All the big stars were on it, Kenny Rogers, Sylvester Stallone. I mean, because your parents could watch it and watch their stars, and the kids could watch it and watch the puppets. So it was a show for everybody. Your parents got something out of it, you got out of it, so it was all good. 1996, he actually did his own show called The Louie Show for CBS. That wasn't a big hit. It only lasted 6 episodes and was canceled, which he wasn't the only one, man. Joan Rivers tried, Chevy Chase tried, everybody tries a talk show, and you gotta have, if you're not on one of those big names, it's tough to get a new one out there. Arsenio Hall, he had a big hit. They brought it back for a season. They said they were gonna renew him, then dropped it. So it's not easy to have a talk show, man. It's they got the ones that people have always watched. Those are the ones people are gonna tune in. So if you get another one, hats off Jimmy Kimmel. I mean, he don't have as big of an audience, but he did work his way up where he's got his own talk show, or he's got less people watching, but still enough that it's on the air. So that's cool. A lot of people say, which one do you watch? And it depends on the guest. If it's somebody you like, you tune in one. If it's somebody you like on the other one, you tune in the other. So, but I mean, there's only so much of a market. It gets oversaturated. If there's too many talk shows, there's just too much out there, and you get sick of watching them. Let's see. Other things he might have been known for was The Weakest Link. He was on Scrubs, Grace Under Fire, Touched by an Angel, Chicago Hope. These are all, shows we grew up with. I mean, he got on, so he was working steady, and if you can get paid to do something in this business and work steady, you're doing good. Better than having a day job, right? 2006, he was actually a World Series of Poker finalist, which every now and then, I get up to the casino, I'll play a little poker every now and then. I have fun with it. 2012, he was on the Big Baby Boomer comedy special, so that was cool. This one I didn't know about him either. He actually was a spokesperson for Land O'Lakes Butter, which, hey, I'll bring up again. I'm a spokesperson for G Vegas Buffalo Sauce. Get over and buy some buffalo sauce. Get over to the website, www.gvegas.webs.com. Shipped right to your door. Buffalo sauce. And this stuff's good, man. I'll tell you. I go down for a game and your mouth pops. Pow! That's what's going to happen to you. What he's doing recently, and I am a fan of this show. I'm at work, and I don't work hard. We get a TV. I work at a restaurant daytime, do comedy at night, and we got the TV going in the restaurant dining room, and he is on Funny You Should Ask, daytime television. It's a game show. They got a bunch of comedians on there. There's a funny answer to every question that's asked the contestants. He's a regular on that show, and they got a good mixture. Gilbert Gottfried's been on, John Lovitz, Gabriel Iglesias. I think they've had it's a group of comedians just sit there and they just give a funny answer to the things, and it's entertaining to see who can come up with the funniest spin on a question, but they keep it lighthearted. I mean, it's clean / semi-dirty, but they never get filthy. Which, although John Lovitz, he's the one guy, he goes a little bit overboard, but Louie called him out for it once. So you really bring this show up another level, don't you? But some people like dirty comedy, some people like clean, but there's something in it for everybody. I would definitely recommend that. I actually sent in a submission to be on the show, and apparently they didn't want me on because they didn't call me back, so I did try to be a contestant on the show. They have Jimmy Walker on there every now and then, which I got an old local TV show I did, The Comedy Kitchen. I had Jimmy Walker on as a guest on my cooking show, so it would be cool if I go on Funny You Should Ask. I was going to say Funny the Clown. I'm already on Funny the Clown podcast. If I should go on Funny You Should Ask as a contestant, and they had Jimmy Walker there, as one of the, comedian panel, and if he remembered me from my cooking show, that would be cool. So hey, if you're out there listening, give me a call. I'll gladly fly out and be on your show. I got no guest today, so I guess instead of doing trivia, I will leave you off with the What It's Worth section. I'm Dennis Wirth, and this is What It's Worth. He worked clean. He always worked because he worked clean. He could work anywhere, where if you work dirty, you may work regular, but you can't work anywhere. You're limited to work. A personality we all remember. Sure, he had one blemish on his record, but we all do, so don't judge him for that. Judge him by his entire body of work. Judge me by my entire body of work, because, I shouldn't even let it bother me, because nobody of anybody I respect or anybody of any relevance in the comedy world has any problem with me. But these 20-year-old kids who can't hack it in the real comedy world, they like to attack me because I can make it in the comedy world, so they feel by attacking me that I'll get their name out there. So have at it. You're a bunch of idiots. You're never going to make it doing that. See if you can bring somebody up. See if you can make their day. Make them feel good about themselves. That's the challenge. Don't make somebody feel bad about themselves, because any idiot can do that, and that's what you are, an idiot. So hats off to Louie for keeping it clean, keeping it light. And when he was talking about, I've seen him, he's been on talk shows, and he talks about people about his abusive childhood. And if there's one kid watching him talking about it, that one kid that's getting abused may actually help him get through that. But you know what? I'm not alone. There's another person on TV who's been through what I went through, and I almost felt like that when I seen him talking about it, because my dad was abused. You know what? I'm not alone. I'm not the only person who went through it. Louie went through it too. He survived. He laughed about it, and damn it, I can too. So hats off to Louie Anderson for being a great spokesperson and for talking about the pain in his life, because if you can talk about it, maybe you can help somebody else through it. And if you can help somebody else, hey, the world would be a better place. World's a better place by tuning in. Funny Like Clown podcast. I'm your host, Dennis Wirth. Tell your friends, tell your neighbors. Get in here, man. I hope I'm keeping you entertained, and the numbers keep growing, and I want to thank you guys for that. Hopefully, if you can bring one friend each over here, I just double my listening base. We can get the audience out that laugh about life, because laughter is the best medicine. Until the next episode, keep laughing, folks. Good night.